Jane Duker, John Deal, and Tony Messenger. The board meeting is in session. Tony, you're up.
So, big front page story on the Post-Dispatch today about Auditor Tom Schweik's latest audit into tax credit programs. This is the third in a row on specific tax credit programs that are very popular in St. Louis. This one about the Brownfield tax credit, which is used to clean up old properties that ultimately need to be redeveloped. And this is the worst of the three audits. And what Auditor Schweik found, which had been previously reported by Jeremy Kohler in the Post-Dispatch, is that the Brownfield tax credit program is not being overseen by the Department of Economic Development very well at all. The main company, Environmental Operations, that gets most of the tax credits in the St. Louis area, bids on its own work, presents its bids as the lowest bid, sometimes when they are not. And the state allows this to happen. The state doesn't follow up to make sure that the jobs are being created. The state doesn't require complete competitive bidding, and in areas when it says it does, it doesn't follow the full paperwork. It's a very damning audit about a tax credit program. And here's what worries me, because here's what happens with these tax credit programs. They have a lot of supporters. The union workers who end up getting the contracts to do the work support it. The historics and the low income. This is the important thing for people to understand. None of these three audits, each of which are critical of elements of the tax credit program, primarily the accountability portion of it, the portion that makes sure that taxpayers are getting bang for their buck. None of them say get rid of the programs. None of them say the programs don't have value. The programs aren't important to the future of St. Louis and development in St. Louis. What they say, and what this one specifically says, is you got to watch the money. You got to know where it's going. You've got to follow traditional bidding practices, and that's what's not being done right now. And it's incumbent upon the state, and this is primarily, I think, an executive branch situation. Be interested to know if John Deal thinks the legislature needs to get involved. This is a basic taxpayer accountability issue. You can't be giving out millions and millions of dollars to clean up old properties without somebody really following the track of the money.
John Deal.
Yeah, I think actually, Tony, we're actually maybe getting on the same page about what tax credit reform really is. I've been, and the bills I've filed and been supporting for the past couple of years, I don't think the caps are necessarily as important as how the programs are operated. And the tax credit reform bills that the House has put out over the past 3 years have all dealt with programming changes within these programs. And the problems that you run into are when the programs have discretion in them. That is, some bureaucrat somewhere gets to pick who the winners and losers are, and you don't have the accountability necessarily in the follow-up that you do.
And that's the case in Brownfield.
I think we should take away the discretion in Brownfields, okay? We've proposed that before. Historic tax credits, our bills have always hung up and have been fought by the governor's office because we take away their discretion to administer the programs. I believe tax credits is like tax policy.
But historics don't have discretion. Brownfield has.
Oh, yes, they do. On how
on
how they're processed. Okay. So that the discretion in the historic is how quickly they move it, what the right remedies are if an adverse decision is made, whether or not I like this developer, so I'm going to move this one quickly, but I don't like this guy, so I'm going to slow burn it and say you didn't dot an I, send the application back, and they have to start through the whole process again. So that's discretion.
So and there's
no
pocket vetoes going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so what our bills have done, okay, that we've never been able to get across the finish line because of this topic, and this is something the administration has always fought us on in the Senate, is taking away the discretion in these programs. If you qualify, and the project qualifies, and it meets certain fiscal parameters, that you get the credit, and that's the way it ought to operate.
Here's my question. Maybe you guys are smarter than I can. How come when these tax credits and TIFs and everything else are given out, how come there's never a follow-up when it's all said and done? How much benefit did the tax really do? How much economic development was there really? Why is there no money ball after this has all been done?
Two things. One, we are smarter than you. So thanks
yeah,
for
we agree on that. Is that unanimous?
Wow,
we agree unanimously. Thank you for recognizing
Unanimous.
that.
Well done.
But part of it is because there legitimately is. It is difficult to track these things in terms of economic development and separating apples from oranges and making sure that this program is actually producing those jobs, or were those jobs related to something else. I think that's complicated, but primarily because people in both parties and the people that are influenced by the developers and their lobbyists, they don't want this sort of accountability because they've got it great right now. They're able to use millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer dollars without a lot of accountability, and that's the way they want it.
I mean, we've been dealing with this issue when I was in the governor's office, 12 years ago. We passed, Senator Gibbons and the Holden administration passed the last tax credit reform bill that's passed. And, the challenge is always looking at what has it generated. Now, there's all kinds of models that they use in order to give this stuff out. Just check and see if they actually live up to the models that you used to give them out at the first place. That would be a good start. I don't know that I agree with John on the discretion issue. The bottom line is you go to any state office, you go to the DMV. If they want to mess with you, they're going to mess with you. Those are bad bureaucrats. You can't, make laws as to bad bureaucrats, okay? And so, the governor and the executive branch needs to be held accountable if they're playing games. Now, I agree with objective criteria for giving out tax credits, and that's...
And you would agree that there ought to be remedies for
absolutely,
someone to
clawbacks.
have if you get...
We did the first clawbacks.
But also remedies by people who are treated unfairly in the process by the bad bureaucrats or by the bureaucrats playing politics with the project.
Yeah. And I think that you're not doing your job when you do that, and you should be punished for not doing your job. But but this is a long-standing problem, and it's bipartisan, and I get exhausted because we talk about it all the time. These are this is off-book money. This isn't even part of the budgeting process. That's the very frustrating part about tax credits.
And you talk about waste, fraud, and abuse with food stamps
right.
or welfare or whatever else. There's more waste, fraud, and abuse, it sounds like, from the big boys than there ever is from the little guys.
But it's rich people, so we don't want to talk about waste, fraud, and abuse. We'd rather beat up on some poor people.
Well, and that's the thing, too. It's the strategically aligned people who all want to protect this. And again, the aims of the programs are not the problem. Redevelopment in the context of historic, they've done some really great things. You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But you have to look at the fact that the middlemen are making more money in tax credits than the people actually conducting the activity that you're trying to incentivize.
Right. But the problem has been the entire focus, and this is where the governor's tried to turn the focus, is where it's just purely a cap issue. So let's talk about a cap.
Cap doesn't take care of that.
Versus how we actually administer the programs. I would rather spend $100 million on something which is well administered, is fair, and accountable than spend $80 million on something where there is no accountability.
I would too, but why can't we talk about both?
We have, but it's hung up.
I disagree with you as it relates to the cap. I agree with you as it relates to discretion on the Brownfield.
You can't take away all the discretion, guys. It's unrealistic.
You can take away a lot of it. You can take away a lot of it.
But we have talked about both. So the problem is, and the reason these bills haven't moved forward, is we reduce the caps, but as part of reducing the caps, we put more accountability in the programs, and that's where it dies.
That is John Deal, current soon-to-be Speaker of the House. That's Tony Messenger from the Post-Dispatch, and Jane Duker back more with the board meeting on the Big 550 KT.